Have you ever looked at the news and wondered, how did things get so crazy, so fast? Why do societies that seem perfectly fine one day just explode into chaos the next? It's a huge question, one that keeps a lot of smart people up at night. Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful framework that gives a compelling answer. So, let's get into it.
I love this line from the band Devo. It's such a great way to kick things off because it really hits on something critical. The conflicts we see right on the surface, they're often just the tip of the iceberg. They're driven by these deep unseen forces, motivations, desires, and memories that have been building up, sometimes for generations.
So, this is our central question, the big mystery we're trying to solve. We're not just talking about slow, gradual change here. We're talking about those sudden ruptures, those moments where it feels like the whole system just breaks apart. What is it that sets the stage for these social earthquakes? Well, to find the answer, we have to start with the most fundamental human driver of all.
And that driver is desire. Simple as that. Before we can even begin to understand big things like political movements or global conflicts, we have to get a handle on what people want. Because when you get right down to it, our collective desires are the engine that creates these massive social forces.
But here's the crucial insight, the real kicker. Our desires aren't just random whims. The theory we're looking at today suggests they're deeply shaped by our biology and our collective long-term memories. And this is exactly why people who want similar things, who share similar stories, naturally start to cluster together. They form the basic building blocks of some incredibly powerful social groups.
And these clusters of shared desire and belief, you could think of them like giant, invisible creatures moving through society. The source material has a fantastic name for them: social beasts. It's an awesome metaphor for what are more formally known as belief-desire regimes. And trust me, understanding this concept is the key to unlocking everything else.
So a belief-desire regime, or BDR for short, is basically this powerful fusion. It's what a group wants, that's the desire part, and the stories and justifications it tells itself to legitimize that want, that's the belief part. So it's not just some dry political idea, it's an idea that's been supercharged with raw emotion and motivation. And that's what gives a BDR the power to mobilize people and exert real, tangible force on the world.
And once you start looking, you see these beasts everywhere. Think about that powerful drive for self-rule, power of the people. That's the beast of the people. Or what about the relentless focus on economic growth and efficiency? That's the beast of capital. Each one of these is a BDR, a potent mix of a deeply held want and a belief system that justifies it.
Now you might be thinking, okay, cool, but why not just call this ideology or identity? That's a great question, because a BDR is actually something more, something bigger. It's not just an ideology because it's juiced up with raw emotional desire. And it's way more than just an identity because it's an active force that's constantly trying to reshape society in its own image. A BDR is the whole shebang: the belief, the desire, and the power that combo creates.
Okay, so we've got these competing social beasts, these BDRs, roaming around society. The next logical question is, how does their competition actually lead to one of those big social explosions? The answer lies in something called the strain-release cycle. A good way to think about it is to imagine society as a giant pressure cooker.
The central idea here is that all social systems are constantly under pressure, or what this framework calls strain. And where does this strain come from? It's actually pretty simple. It's the gap between the world a BDR promises its followers and the world they actually live in. When that reality doesn't match up with the promise, strain starts to build, quietly, right under the surface. And this strain doesn't just build up randomly. Nope, it follows a pretty predictable 5-step pattern. First, it starts as just scattered, disconnected frustrations, little annoyances here and there. Then, a powerful story comes along and amplifies and connects all those frustrations into a shared cause. At a certain point, the system hits a threshold, a breaking point, where compromise just isn't an option anymore. And that leads to a sudden release of all that pent-up pressure. Maybe it's a shocking election, a massive protest, or even a revolution. And finally, things calm down. A temporary resolution is reached, but the seeds of the very next conflict are already being planted.
Now, I know this might all sound a bit abstract, but what's so cool about this framework is that you can actually use it like a new pair of glasses to look back at history and see these cycles playing out, clear as day. So, let's do a quick tour of how these competing BDRs have shaped the last 100 years or so.
In the early 20th century, you have the BDRs of nationalism and revolution just smashing into each other, which led to the catastrophic pressure release of 2 world wars. After that, the world got a breather.
In the 50s and 60s, a new set of BDRs around the welfare state created a lot of stability by managing that social strain. Then, starting in the 80s, a new beast came to town: market globalism. It dominated for decades, and it kept things stable by either suppressing strain or kind of pushing it somewhere else. Which, of course, brings us to the last decade or so, a period of insane volatility where multiple BDRs like populism and globalism are locked in this fierce cage match with no clear winner in sight.
So after all that theory and history, what's the big takeaway? I mean, why is thinking about the world in terms of belief-desire regimes and strain cycles so important, especially right now?
Well, it gives us at least 4 incredibly powerful insights. First, it teaches us that these huge crises are never really sudden. The strain has been building under the surface for years. Second, it explains why a super passionate minority can often steamroll a quiet majority. Their BDR just has more juice, more intensity. Third, it shows us why collective memory, the stories we tell ourselves about the past, can be way more powerful than objective facts. And finally, and this one is so important, it warns us that a calm, stable-looking society isn't necessarily a healthy one. It could just be hiding a massive, dangerous buildup of strain.
And this all leads to a pretty radical redefinition of democracy. This framework suggests that democracy isn't some peaceful, stable end goal we finally arrive at. No way. Instead, it's a messy, difficult, constant process of managing the strain from all these competing BDRs. A healthy democracy is just one of these figured-out ways to release that pressure in small, controlled ways, like elections, protests, and debates, so that it doesn't build up to a catastrophic explosion. It's high maintenance on purpose.
All right, so let's use this lens and point it directly at our world today. What does this framework tell us about all the conflicts and pressures we're all feeling right now in the 2020s?
According to the analysis, we're living in a period of really intense, overlapping strain from several major BDRs all fighting for the top spot at the same time. You've got the powerful drive for absolute safety and health, call it biosecurity. Then there's the push for ultimate efficiency through technology or techno-optimization. We're also seeing a huge resurgence of nationalism. And hanging over all of it is the existential dread of the climate crisis. All of these are generating enormous amounts of strain all at once.
And so that leaves us with one final and, I think, crucial question to think about. As you look at the world around you, in your country, in your community, which of these social beasts do you see building the most pressure? Which beliefs and desires are clashing the hardest? And are our systems doing a good job of managing that strain? Or does it feel like we're getting close to a threshold? This framework doesn't give us any easy answers, but it gives us a really powerful new way to ask the questions. Thanks for tuning in.